Gabby Hayes finally talks about Roy Rogers. Gabby Hayes was born Georgia Frances Gabby Hayes on May 7, 1885 in Stannards, New York. Hayes grew up far away from the dusty desert roads and cow towns that he would later act in. His early years were very different from the character he would play later. He was the son of a hotel owner and for a while he lived a nice, middle-class life in the northeastern United States. As a young man, Hayes was really good at performing and telling stories, skills that would later make him one of Hollywood's most lovable characters. Before getting into movies, Hayes had many different jobs. He tried playing professional baseball for a short time and even tried engineering before he fell in love with performing on stage in vaudeville shows together with his wife, Olivia Ireland. He created a popular stage show that traveled all across the country during the early 1900s. Their shows mixed comedy, music, and funny skits, and Hayes quickly became famous for his funny facial expressions and great sense of comic timing. It wasn't until the stock market crash of 1929 took away most of his money that decided to try his luck in the growing movie business in California, a move that would change his life forever. When he arrived in Hollywood, Hayes found regular work as a character when movies were changing from silent films to talking films. At first, he appeared in small parts, often playing bad guys, bartenders, or town people in early westerns. However, as 1930 seconds went on, he started to create a special place for himself as the perfect Western sidekick. His Changindo Gabby, the bearded, grumpy, but lovable old man with a heart of gold, happened almost by chance. Hayes himself was a clean-shaven, well-spoken man when the cameras weren't rolling, but the character of Gabby with his big bushy beard, simple wisdom, and famous sayings like "Darn it" won over audiences everywhere. In real life, George Gabby Hayes was nothing like the messy, slow-talking, bearded old man that audiences loved to watch on the movie screen. When the cameras stopped rolling, Hayes was a smart, well-spoken, and perfectly groomed gentleman. He was well-read, polished in his manners, and always thoughtful when talking to people. But movie audiences knew him best as the classic rough-looking frontier old-timer, always mumbling colorful phrase like, "Concern it, year, dern, tootin', dadgummit." Dernicity female, and young whippersnapper. His voice was made rougher for funny effect, and his messy appearance became the trademark of lovable sidekick character, a role that would make famous for generations of Western fans. Hayes' journey to becoming a movie legend really started between 1935 and 1939 when he played the role of Wendy Halliday, the funny, grumpy friend to cowboy hero Hopalong Cassidy. Played by William Boyd as Wendy, Hayes became a very important part of the Hopalong Cassidy series, adding humor and warmth to the tough landscapes of the Old West. However, in 1939, an argument about money made him leave and stop working with Paramount Pictures. It was a dangerous move for an actor so closely connected with one single role, but Hayes' talent and charm made sure they didn't stay out of work for long. Soon after, he found a new workplace at Republic Pictures. Since Paramount kept the rights to the name Wendy Halliday, Republic simply renamed him Gabby Whittaker, a name that would become famous in its own right. The change was not much more than just a formality. Gabby Whittaker was basically the same sweet, quick-witted sidekick Hayes had perfected, and audiences welcomed him happily. Between 1939 and 1946, Gabby Hayes appeared in more than 40 films for Public, making his reputation solid as the most beloved sidekick in Western movies. His rough charm and comedic timing added depth and warmth to the adventures of Hollywood's great cowboy stars during this very productive time. Hayes worked alongside Roy Rogers and Amazing 44 times, a partnership that became one of the most well-known in movie history. He also worked together with Gene Autry in 7 films and with Wild Bill Elliott in 14, often under the skilled direction of Joseph K., who directed 34 of Hayes' pictures. Beyond Republic, Gabby's talents got the attention of other Western legends as well. He appeared 6 times with the strong and steady Randolph Scott and no fewer than 15 times with the legendary John Wayne. Not always as a funny sidekick, but sometimes as a tough, even bad guy character. One of their most memorable enemies working together came in Raoul Walsh's 1940 classic Dark Command, where Hayes played Wayne's loyal sidekick in a film that also featured a young Roy Rogers in a smaller role. The movie became a showcase of Hayes' range, his ability to balance humor and bravery, toughness and good-heartedness. By this point, Gabby Hayes had become more than just a character name. It was a beloved part of American movies. Despite his sidekick label, Hayes was very much a star in his own right. His popularity led to his own television program, The Gabby Hayes Show, which aired in nearly 1,950 seconds and introduced a new generation of young viewers to his friendly charm. On the show, he showed old Western films and told stories, speaking directly to children with the same warmth and humor that had made him loved by movie watchers for decades. In many ways, this television work helped connect classic Western movies and the new medium of television, making sure that his influence would continue long after the best days of Western film. For decades, fans of classic Westerns have wondered what really happened behind the scenes between the legendary Roy Rogers and his unforgettable sidekick, George Gabby Hayes. The two men shared the screen in some of the most beloved cowboy films of 1,930 seconds and 1,940 seconds, forming a duo that defined the golden age of Westerns. Hayes, known for his scruffy beard, country-sounding voice, and funny frontier phrases, rarely talked about his working relationships in Hollywood, but in a rare and very personal interview late in his life, Gabby Hayes finally broke his silence on Roy Rogers, and what he said shows the deep respect, admiration, and complexity that existed between the two stars. Roy was more than just a cowboy hero to the public, Hayes once said thoughtfully. He was a man who carried that same honesty and goodness off the screen, what you saw in those pictures. The courage, the humility, the smile that could calm down the toughest flaw. That was all Roy Hayes' words captured the main idea of Roger Sapiel, not only as a performer, but as a human being. Rogers represented a kind of heroism that went beyond Hollywood. To Hayes, he wasn't just an Thurko star. He was a symbol of American values, a man who believed in hard work, faith, and family. Hayes went on to explain how their friendship had grown naturally despite their different backgrounds. We came from opposite ends of the road, he said with a chuckle. Roy was this clean-cut singing cowboy, and I was the scruffy old-timer who looked like he'd been chewing cactus for breakfast. But somehow it worked. Hemad the kids cheer, and I made the parents laugh. Their chemistry became one of the most recognizable trademarks in Western movies. Whether they were riding the dusty trails, chasing bandits, or trading funny jokes, the connection between Roy Rogers and Gabby Hayes felt genuine because it was genuine. Behind the cameras, their relationship was based on mutual respect. Hayes often admired Roger's professionalism and dedication. Roy never complained. Hayes recalled, even when we were out in the heat, sweating through our shirts and covered in dust, he stayed cheerful. He'd crack a joke or start humming a tune just to keep everyone's spirits up. That kind of leadership left a lasting impression on Hayes, who had worked with countless stars during his long career. To him, Rogers stood apart, not just as a performer, but as a man of character. Yet Hayes also admitted the challenges of working in the fast-paced film industry where fame could easily overshadow their friendship. We didn't always see eye to eye, he admitted. So my time aside complain about the scripts or the way the studio wanted more songs and less action. Roy would laugh and tell him, Gabby, the kids love the songs, and he was right. He always knew what the audience wanted. Their occasional disagreement about creative things never damaged their bond. In fact, Hayes said those moments actually made their partnership stronger. He taught me patience, Hayes reflected, and I think I taught him how to have a little fun with the rough edges. When asked later in life about the legacy of their work together, Hayes' tone turned sentimental. Those pictures we made, they weren't just entertainment, he said softly. They gave people hope. The country was going through tough times and folks needed a hero they could believe in. Roy gave them that. I was just lucky enough to ride alongside him. It was clear that Hayes saw their work not as just show business, but as a contribution to American culture at a moment when hope was really needed. Even after Hayes left the Roy Rogers series, he never said a mean word about his former partner. In fact, he continued to speak warmly of Rogers whenever asked. He treated everyone on set with respect, from the cameraman to the horse handler. That's the mark of a real star, Hayes said proudly. And he'll tell you something. When you've worked in Hollywood as long as I did, you don't forget the ones who stay true to themselves. In his final years, as Hayes looked back over a career that included radio, film, and television, he often mentioned Rogers as one of the finest men he ever worked with. Roy made me look good, he joked. And that's no small feat when you were a scruffy old coot like me. But the humor was real affection, a deep, long-lasting appreciation for a partnership that had won the hearts of millions. When asked what he would say to Roy if could speak to him again, Hayes paused for a long moment before replying, "I'd thank him for the laughs, the trails, the songs, and the friendship. We might have played cowboy and sidekick, but in my book, Roy Rogers was the real deal. The kind of man America could be proud of." Gabby Hayes' shirtful thoughts finally gave fans a glimpse into one of Hollywood's most loved friendships. His words painted a portrait of two men united by purpose, humor, and respect, a bond that lives on in every frame of film they ever shared, and even now, long after both men have ridden into the sunset, their partnership remains one of the most beloved in Western history. A timeless reminder of loyalty, laughter, and the true spirit of the American frontier, following the heartbreaking death of his beloved wife, Olive E. Ireland Hayes on July 5, 1957. George Gabby Hayes entered a quiet and thoughtful period of his life. The loss deeply affected him as Olive had been not only his lifelong companion but also the driving force behind much of his career. She had managed his money, worked out contracts, and stood by him through the unpredictable world of show business. After her passing, Hayes found comfort in familiar surroundings, going back to his ranch on Tuca Lake in California, a property that had once been a place of laughter, friendship, and shared dreams. The ranch, tucked away among the peaceful landscapes of the San Fernando Valley, gave him a peaceful place to relax where he could be close to nature, away from the bright lights of Hollywood that had defined so much of his earlier life. Here, surrounded by his cherished memories and keepsakes from his film and television days, Hayes spent countless hours thinking back about the golden years of Western cinema and the friendship he shared with stars like Roy Rogers, John Wayne, and Hopalong Cassidy. By the late 1960s, however, Hayes' health began to get worse. Early in 1969, he was admitted to St. Joseph Hospital in Burbank, California, after suffering problems from cardiovascular. The once strong cowboy who had spent decades playing the tough and hardy sidekick of the Old West was now facing the weakness of old age. Yet, even in the hospital, those who visited him remembered his typical warmth and gentle humor. Nurses and doctors described him as polite, cheerful, and thankful for the care he received. Hayes often thought back on his long life and career, expressing gratitude for the opportunities Hollywood had given him and for the fans who had never forgotten his contributions to the Western genre. Though the illness slowly weakened him, he faced his condition with dignity and acceptance. Much like the stoic frontier characters he had brought to life on screen, on February 9, 1969, Gabby Hayes passed away peacefully at the age of 83, closing the final chapter of a life that had gone from the era of silent films to the golden age of television. His death marked the end of an era for many Western fans who remembered him not only as the classic grizzled sidekick, but also as a symbol of honesty, loyalty, and humor in a genre that celebrated those very traits.